Hello and welcome to, do you want to say it?
Big Socialisms are the best.
Commanding highs all the time.
Commanding highs all the time.
And the official podcast of the Socialist Party Manchester and Trafford branch.
You made a very convincing Venn diagram, didn't you? Of Peep Show fans, socialism fans, podcast listeners.
So
in the middle.
I think we fit in the centre there, definitely.
So if you like Peep Show, if you like socialism, welcome to the podcast. Otherwise, we'll be discussing trains. You've probably got strong views or limited views on that, and we will be discussing trains. Myself, Jack, Bridget here from the Socialist Party, and Conor, a train worker
Yes.
and RMT member.
And also
That's right.
genuine train fan.
Genuine train fan. Not before I started working on the railways, but afterwards, without a doubt, genuine train fan. Much to the distress of my girlfriend and other people I know.
So we'll start from there. We'll be starting with, we're going to try and, this is a new podcast, so we're going to be trying out a few things. It's a bit of a pilot episode. Can you pilot a train?
Not at the moment.
No, but in the future under socialism, you'll be able to have flying
Anyone
trains.
can will be able to realise that dream.
The RMT is opposed to all piloting of trains. ASLEF may be a different story.
Are we going to stick to the three?
Yes, the three-act
Three-act.
structure.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's talk about, this segment is going to be roughly on what's wrong with things at the moment. In this case, what's wrong with the train and transport industries. And what is it? What's the title for this bit?
Well, the working title is going to be capitalism, dystopian, and completely unscientific.
So welcome to Capitalism, Dystopia, and Totally Unscientific.
Yes.
Well, we'll be talking mostly about trains.
And fans of socialism will recognise that as a reference to the seminal text by Engels, one of my favourite Marxist works, because it's nice and short.
Although sadly someone who's not written much about trains, so we've had to do a lot of our own work on this. So I think everyone can agree, we don't like the way private trains are set up. Is there a strong case for nationalisation? What is wrong with private trains as they are at the moment? So I think in general they're very over expensive. A lot of services don't run properly, and we'll get into more detail on that. But what are the causes to this, and what are some examples of what's terrible about trains and British transport at the moment?
Well, without a doubt, speaking as a railway worker, public transport can't be run on a for-profit basis because it isn't profitable. What happens at the moment is that the government subsidises these private train companies to an amount 3 times than it was before under British Rail. And these private companies, often operators from Germany, the Netherlands and other places like that, are used to subsidise their profits at home, which the British taxpayer is paying for.
So we're currently spending on a private industry, we're actually spending more subsidising it than we did when it was publicly owned and the state ran it.
3 times more than we were spending before. And at the end of the day, public transport is the social good. So it's productive in a way that it's transporting people to and from work, to leisure and other things like that, but the method of transportation itself isn't particularly profitable. So you cannot run it on a private basis. The only way you can do that is by doing it through an artificial market.
The social gains of people being able to travel quickly, get to and from work, and what it opens up in terms of where people can travel from some areas where you don't have decent transport or can't drive or whatever. That's probably quite a good gain to old GDP.
That's exactly right. And you can see that at the moment where lots of the train operating companies are trying to
Good analysis.
reduce their expenses. And the only way they can reduce their expenses is by getting rid of staff. You can see that in the driver-only operation dispute on various...
No, anything about Northern.
Not that I would know anything about that. On Northern, on Southern, on Greater Anglia, and other South West Railway and other train operating companies across the country.
I think it shows that these private companies there's no democratic say over what they do. They're owned by Richard Branson and other people like that, and we have no democratic say in how they're run, so they can do a massively, or attempt to do a massively unpopular manoeuvre, like getting rid of the guards on the train, and the only thing stopping it is the trade union movement, which is thankfully very strong in the trains due to the RMT.
The most fighting of all the unions.
they love a scrap.
Yeah, how is it that the government subsidies have gone up, but also the fares have increased by ridiculous amounts? I've got a fact for you here. You're like a
Nice.
statistic. Rail fares have gone up by an average of 121% between 1995 and 2017, so when they were first privatised, which is obviously far above inflation. So there's been this massive increase in the cost of train travel, but also they seem to be, as you mentioned before, receiving huge government subsidies as well. So where is all that money going?
The money is going to various different places. It's being taken to renting the trains from private companies.
Roscoe's,
that's it. It's going to the private companies that are running these services, the shareholders and other people like that, Richard Branson, like we mentioned. And this is something that's not often talked about, is the amount of money that's going towards this superfluous layer of managers and directors that wouldn't be needed in an integrated public democratic transport system.
And this is what's criticised with the old National Rail, and very flawed, I think. Would you say it was an improvement on what we have at the moment?
Well, it's certainly an improvement in what we have at the moment. The BR system was fundamentally flawed in that we had the same managers who were there before nationalisation running it. However, BR itself was the cheapest railway system in Europe per pound spent. In the same way, the NHS in this country is the cheapest healthcare system in the world per pound spent.
People seem to have a lot of complaints about the sandwiches on British Rail. It seems to be their main beef about it.
There's no beef in them, that's the problem.
But you'd be lucky to get sandwiches now. A lot of the time they're getting rid of any catering on trains, again, to cut staff costs. It's the only way they can save money. A lot of people, they want to be able to eat on the way to their destination, don't they? So having curling sandwiches, whilst isn't great, and that's a symptom of running on a shoestring budget, it's better than, at the moment, having no sandwiches whatsoever.
So it's hugely unprofitable, and yet private companies doing it, bailed out by government subsidies. I think it's something to stress, because it's something I didn't know to do a bit of reading on this. The Roscoe's, who a lot of the train carriages and things are rented from a different private company. That means it's a running large expense, far more expensive than buying them outright, and something which the private sector, which is inherently based on sort of short-term gain, short-term earnings, can't have any long plan of how to improve the rail networks. You'll lead to cost-cutting, corner cutting and things. That leads to cutting on safety, but also on just the trains they have. There's not been any significant advance in electrification of the railways either. Most of them aren't electrified. Most of that was done under National Rail. Very small amount just after the new investment in private rail, but since then, pretty much nothing. And I think a lot of subsidies as well. We saw subsidies went up dramatically in about 2000, 2002 after a couple of high-profile train disasters that had big crashes where lots of people died. And it was only at that point where the government decided, better start funding this quite useful bit of society, because otherwise safety and cords just get cut for profit. And but nothing fundamentally has changed. Just subsidising these private companies who are quite happy to take the money for maintaining the rail. A lot of the money as well going towards paying interest on the original British Rail debt as well. Was it 40% or something like that?
It's a huge amount.
Ridiculous amount, nearly half anyway of the money, but it doesn't all go towards the maintenance of the tracks, improving the tracks. It's going towards interest on debt, which has ballooned to over 10 billion, I believe.
I think those because they can always rely on the fact that the government will bail them out. So with these sort of private companies, because I think there was one train line that was taken back over by the government recently. I can't remember
East
exactly
Coast
where
Rail.
it was.
Correct. It's the East Coast Line, which it's now been the third time that it's been renationalised, because it is not profitable, as all of the services are not profitable, under a private franchise. When that service was nationalised previously, before they re-privatised it, as recently happened, and they had to nationalise it again, third time, they were putting £300 million a year into the Treasury. And while it was nationalised, not only were profits flowing into the coffers of the government, passenger satisfaction went up, staff satisfaction went up, punctuality went up. So this is just a basic fact that everything will improve under nationalisation, even under a flawed system that BR had, but that's something that we would obviously fight for further gains from that. We want to improve that system, but even under that very lacklustre system, it would still be an improvement on the system we have now.
The big ideological arguments for trade and travel are saying competition is something the public sector didn't have. It's something the private sector doesn't have, because all of these there's a tendency for these capitalist companies to go into monopoly, and you don't need to read Lenin's Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, to know that.
Although
Jack would like you to.
It is an excellent read. I'll give it a 10 out of 10.
It's a great read. If your train's delayed, you'll have time to get through the whole thing. It's only short. I think I read it on the train. I read most of these things on the train, which is a good thing about delays. You can get more literature.
Great ideas, only a
train travel.
But you can see, but even without reading something like that, you don't need to read that to be able to see that these monopolies do occur, and you don't get this sort of fancy Adam Smith type economics where selfish motives will lead to the greater good. Effectively, that everyone will compete. You'll get cheaper tickets because people will compete to bring down the tickets lower. You don't see that. You don't see that with the buses in Manchester. They just agree to put their prices up at the same time and have their cartel of Stagecoach and First. Boo. And Arriva like to stick their nose in as well. Means you have to get different types of tickets for each time. It's the same on the trains. You have to have several different types of passes, tickets and things like that. And it's just nonsensical in the end. But this competition doesn't drive people to look for a competitive advantage. It just means that the ones with the bigger purse strings, the ones that can actually afford the waste, will actually come out on top and form these monopolies. And so all these criticisms that you can see, which are genuine things of the public sector trades, you see there, and often worse in the private sector. And of course, we're now going to be coming on to what is to be done in the near future.
Must crush capitalism.
So how can we effectively nationalise the trains? Are Corbyn's plans of taking franchises gradually into public ownership, are they a good idea? Is it feasible? What sort of nationalisation would we like to see as well? And could we take examples from places around socialist countries, how do the railways work in France and Italy, and places where there are levels of nationalisation or things that are nationalised, and how we see that, for instance, in France, it's something like we pay 7 times the amount for the same ticket you'd be able to get in France. Obviously, they're going to French places, but I don't think I don't think British places aren't that much better, to be honest.
Post-Brexit.
Yeah.
We don't want any of that, do we?
No,
don't want to go to
yeah.
any of those French places.
But, if you want to go to Calais or Bordeaux...
You don't want to go to Calais, it's basically English, so that's the worst thing about it.
But that's the thing, you're paying less money to get between these places.
Yes.
Some of them are quite nice, like Paris and that sort of thing.
You want to go away from Calais as quickly as possible to the rest of France, Lyon or Marseille.
It's lovely, like Normandy's worth a visit as
Very
well.
nice, good
Are we
cider.
officially endorsing Lyon and Marseille?
We're endorsing Lyon, the city, and also Lyon, the film.
But how are
Great
these? What are these train lines like to consider? And also, I know the Italian train lines, are they nationalised?
Yes, they are. Most of the European train lines are nationalised in the majority. Now, there's a small part of the European countries' train lines that are privatised. A lot of that's to do with the European train directive, privatisation directive, if we're going to call it what it is. So I believe in Germany it's about 10% privatised, in Spain it's about 5%, in France it's about 10%. For now, we'll see what happens after Macron's rail reforms, where they're following EU directives to destroy the very, very well-functioning and cost-effective rail network they have got in a country that's about 3 times the size of this one as well.
So could you quickly run us through what Jeremy Corbyn's sort of nationalisation would look like, and perhaps, because I know with the EU's laws on nationalisation, there's limits on what you can do with nationalisation. It has to be, you can nationalise to some extent, but it has to be competitive, things have to be bought at the market value, so you couldn't have the wholesale nationalisation of the 1940s. So you couldn't have anything like that, that's restricted by EU law. And even places with sort of nationalised rail networks like Italy, they've blamed a recent disaster, a bridge collapse, the sort of populist and quite unpleasant in a lot of ways government there has actually blamed EU austerity measures and cuts on this bridge collapse and underfunding. So, but first of all, what would you say about Corbyn's plans, and how would you factor in these legal obstacles?
Well, Corbyn's plans, I'm not sure, as far as my awareness goes, couldn't even be carried through under European competition directives. And Corbyn's plans can only be carried through with saying the state would take over every franchise that ended. Wouldn't happen under European directives. He would still have to let private bidders go for these franchises and then let them take over. And also the key issue here is if there was a Corbyn government for 4 years or 5 years, he wouldn't even be able to nationalise the entirety of the rail network. So Corbyn's plans go nowhere near far enough. Now, interestingly, Corbyn and McDonnell, who is the better half of the two, talks about workers' interest, customer interest and government interest in these networks. So he's talking about a democratic control, a proper level of democratic control in these train franchises, which is a step in the right direction. But fundamentally, Corbyn's programme should be, and I said this as a Labour Party member, never be in any doubt of that. For now.
Disclaimer.
Hanging around with us isn't the best way of keeping your membership card.
Well, you know, I've still not been expelled. They're obviously not very interested in me. I'm not doing enough. I'll have to up the ante. Right?
We'll be right back after this commercial
After
break.
this important message from our sponsors. Ooh, Diet Coke. So refreshing.
We'd just like to apologise for any inconvenience caused by the delay and the software failure on this laptop. Conor, what were you saying?
If you have seen anything suspicious, please say it and we'll get it sorted as soon as possible. If you have noticed any wet weather, please take care on the platforms and on the concourse of the station as it may be slippery. Additionally, please have your tickets and passes ready for inspection as you do alight from the train.
Such a professional.
I don't say it like that because that's the words of an arse. Anyway.
See it, say it, sorted.
See it, say it, sorted.
Sorted.
Sorted! You know, it changes per region.
If you just say it, it gets sorted.
It gets sorted. You text 61016 to the BTP. British Transport Police. Anyway,
Before we
back to the business.
the interlude.
I was talking about Corbyn's policy of rail nationalisation, which
You sure
fundamentally
were.
does not go far enough. What you need is total renationalisation on the, well, I wouldn't even say on the basis of proven need, just take the fucking lot back, because they've been taking the piss out of us for decades, so we need to take it back. No money paid unless to a pension fund, and kick out the privateers from our railway system. It fundamentally makes me sick. There are these profiteers here, feathering their nest with the money of people commuting to work for fucking Deliveroo, working as care home workers and so on, making these billionaire people richer and richer.
Strong words, and words I agree with.
Conor's had 2 tins.
He's had a couple.
I got overexcited.
No, so I would say that's a very important thing about Corbyn's nationalisation programme. Although train nationalisation and these things, it's going against the Thatcherite neoliberal beliefs of privatise everything at work better. Everyone can see that doesn't work, but he needs to be more full on with this. So calling for a confrontation with the sort of capitalist classes running the trains effectively needs to be prepared for confrontation and taking everything in wholesale, because I imagine it's quite difficult to work. For instance, the Roscoes, that idea of having to rent trains. If you were nationalising one bit at a time, you would still be paying large sums of money from the public purse to rent carriages and basic rolling stock from Roscoes and private companies. You'd want to nationalise them all at once, wholesale at least. And then you want to take on the rail networks and things. It's very difficult to organise when all the trains are in lots of different companies as well, and this disintegration we see in the train networks. I mean, the original nationalisation, it was on the very strong terms of, based on what was the big 4 companies, Great Western Railways, obviously, encompassing the West. The others I wouldn't know about because I'm from Shropshire. But I'm sure
they were potato powered, weren't they?
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they were
driven by pigs.
Don't need to know anything else.
Yeah.
But so all of those things very they're needed to be able to make a working network, because in order to make trains run on time, have a proper network, you want to have all these different sectors of various so rolling stock and things like that. You want them centralised, and you want to have a proper democratic oversight of how the trains are run, but you want to take them all on board, because otherwise you're still dealing with private companies doing their own timelines and things. It's much better to take it all in just on a practical level of running the trains, I would imagine. What do you think, Cara, train expert?
Well, that's fundamentally correct. You couldn't have
Excellent.
a whole-scale renationalisation of the railways without leaving the EU, because that would be in contravention of the free movement of capital. So the sensible rail unions, like the RMT, other rail unions are available. I wouldn't join them, but they are available. All agree that you have to leave the EU to renationalise our railways. It simply cannot be done otherwise, and it's the same for the utilities, such as gas and electric, and our water as well. It cannot be done without leaving the EU, because competition laws are opposed to renationalisation, especially renationalisation under democratic workers' control, because the EU fundamentally acts as a boss's club, which is there for the free movement of capital and the exploitation of the workers to the benefit of the bosses.
So will Brexit make life easier for Corbyn if, say, he did come to power post-Brexit? Sorry to drop the
The
Brexit
Brexit,
on there.
Welcome
the Brexit bomb.
You can bleep it out later.
No, it's here, Brexit's here.
Word.
Yeah.
It's here, get used to it.
Brexit would make everything easier for Corbyn. And unfortunately, Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have the cojones to follow through with his own policy. And I've got a lot of respect for Jeremy Corbyn, and that he is there. He's shifting the Overton window just by being in position, being left-wing, being socialist, and most importantly, being anti-imperialist. But Corbyn, if he were to follow what a lot of people in the Labour Party say, a lot of petty bourgeois people in the Labour Party say, to have a second referendum or to support.
Could you translate petty bourgeois for our listeners?
Yeah, I'll translate petty bourgeois. I would say that as middle class, hummus eating, home counties denizens.
Oh, come on.
Oh.
This has been recorded in Chorlton.
Sorry. I
You're
don't live in
offended Jack
Chiltern.
there.
I live in the People's Republic of Tameside, where Harry Pollock came from. I love, as we talked about
Of the
earlier.
Politburo.
Of the Politburo of the Communist Party of Britain. But petty bourgeois, I'd say, would be the less class conscious people in Labour who are more interested in kind of identity, a kind of international identity, rather than a class-based identity.
And this is largely, so it's more sort of middle class people, people sort of university educated things, not people in proper sort of working class jobs, like factory work or just doing sort of retail work as well.
I don't agree with the characterisation of proletarian work, working class work is just factory jobs. I know you're not saying that, but a lot of middle class people do say that. As far as I'm concerned, if you're selling your labour for under £80,000 a year, you're working class. Yeah. Right? If you're voting Tory and you earn under 80k,
it's just
you're an idiot.
Just trying to make petty bourgeois clear to anyone who's not come across the term. That's basically what it is, because it's not necessarily down to the cold economics of it, but it's an attitude, that comes with it as well. Yeah. And if you look on the mean streets of Chorlton, we're recording this very working class podcast after our vegetarian meal.
Well, you've got the estate, to be fair. You've got the estate where we're recording this from.
The estate.
The estate of Chorlton. But I'd say petty bourgeois middle class, that'd be doctors, consultants, head teachers, people in a kind of managerial professional position, people who are traditionally prospect members, if you want to term it like that.
I think just that Brexit, we won't go too far into it, because obviously much has been said and there's much to say on it. I would say this is a sofa of Leave votiers. And
sounds a little bit French there, Jack.
Yeah, well, you don't have to be racist to vote Brexit, that's the thing. But there's a lot of strong left-wing reasons for leaving the EU. We'll have a podcast on this later and hopefully get someone from the Remain camp on as well. We'll hear them, try and make an argument for their sort of stuff. But no one will have heard these sort of arguments within the mainstream press. It's all been either sort of UKIP, sort of racist, xenophobic stuff. You haven't heard Corbyn coming along with strong arguments about nationalisation, how we can improve things outside the EU. But with trains, you can definitely see how that's part of the problem. The EU is one obstacle and power block from the capitalist class Corbyn will be coming up against.
And they do. They would receive millions of pounds worth of fines, wouldn't they, under EU
correct.
law if they did try to attempt that sort of whole-scale nationalisation that we've been advocating for.
It's completely in contravention of EU law to have any kind of nationalised industry, because it's not competitive for capitalists. You're not allowed to do that. It's not acceptable to them.
And to which Corbyn's response should be the official jog on.
In the words of Nick Frost, our saint and saviour.
Oh, if only you would.
That'd be great. I think he'd end a lot of these arguments with the Blairites by flicking the beat up. Dennis Skinner does it. Why doesn't he? That'd be the way forward.
Well,
Yeah,
the fundamental
Dennis
tragedy
Skinner,
at
idol.
Corbyn is that he's got a weak, watered-down Mitterrandist programme that he's capitulated on before he's even in power. He's not prepared to implement his own policy, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
All right, but
We're going to
let's get on to trains.
Discuss-
This is all stuff for later
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah.
And rail nationalisation consistently proves popular, doesn't it? Even with UKIP
Over
voters.
80% support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just to get
We're
to
getting
the
to the socialist vision now.
to get to this, just
Yes.
one last thing to mention about trains in general. It's that it will be very practical in terms of looking at the old wholesale nationalisation. It was done in a very different climate where it was just after the war. Most industries had been temporarily nationalised. During the war, it was effectively a planned economy Britain was in, even under sort of a capitalist basis. And you can see how the railways actually functioned from this. So you had steel nationalised, you had the basic haulage and lorry drivers, lorries and basic carrying of equipment on the roads, they were nationalised, and huge amounts of things which aren't even mentioned with Corbyn's nationalisation, where he's only talking about nationalising like a couple of bits of a train, but all of those things did bring down the costs of running these trains, and you can see where the costs started to peak was when these things got privatised again, and all of this squeezed out Northern Rail, and that's somewhere where it went wrong. So the nationalisation of the trains has to be applied to broader forms of nationalisation. And there's a great film I'll just mention called Hell Drivers, which is a little bit of a 50s propaganda film about how bad that the private lorry driver firms were, and all of the different the lorry drivers basically racing each other and driving off cliffs and stuff. It's very dramatic. It's got Patrick McGowan and Sean Connery and Sid James as well. So I'd recommend that if you want to see some anti-Eddie Stobart propaganda.
There's a good Ken Loach film about privatisation of the railways as well, which deals with the experiences of a series of track workers in the 90s, which I've not seen and I've forgotten the name, but it is well worth a watch. If you just type in Ken Loach track workers, it will turn up.
All right. I won't start with safe search off. So, moving on to the socialist vision. So we've talked about sort of the direct things to do, which, should probably mention, support the RMT's upcoming strikes.
Yes, the RMT is on strike
Solidarity.
on Northern for the next 3 Saturdays, so that will be the Saturday coming up, the Saturday after that, and the Saturday after that.
I'm sure there'll be more after this has been
And there's
uploaded.
another 3 if the talks don't carry on the way they are.
And that's against
And that was,
driver-only operations.
That's against driver-only operations. That's removing the guard from the train, making the train fundamentally unsafe, putting you at risk of antisocial behaviour, assault, muggings, being trapped and dragged in the doors, torn to pieces, fires and the rest of it.
You're multi-purpose.
Like a Swiss Army knife.
And that was another sort of, a privateer sort of criticism of what a nationalised rail industry would be like, is that you would see more strike actions sort of held to, that the rail industry would be held to account by the unions more, but there's actually been a big spike in the number of strike days taken, hasn't there, since the rail industry's been privatised. So it's been...
You've taken the words right out of my mouth. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was going to say. As soon
Yeah.
as they privatised the railways, these companies wanted to increase profits at any cost, constantly flew into disputes with every single union on the railways. obviously the RMT was leading that fight as the correct and democratic union to be in as a railway worker, which everyone knows.
It's okay, we're not a free market economy here. There is only one choice.
There
It's
is
the
only one
RMT.
choice, it's the RMT, because it's an industrial union, which
Yeah.
represents everyone in the railway, not a trade union like an association.
And of course, it works because everyone joins that union, and that is why joining a union actually works. And if the union's actually organised and do what they're supposed to do, your living conditions, your wages, and everything will go right up. And that is why the ultimate solution to all problems is what, Conor? Just bring back the closed shop.
Exactly. It is the simple bullet.
I mean, it's
He
going to
wants
be
to make it a catchphrase.
yeah.
I started that.
Well, it's true. It's true. But moving on to the socialist vision, well, they'll be closed. Will be closed for business in Britain. There'll be that many closed shops.
The whole of the United Kingdom. will
But I
be
think
closed shop.
A
so.
nation
We're
of closed shopkeepers, as Napoleon says.
so this segment, which is the revolution delayed. Very nice bit of punnery there by Bridget.
But the trains will run on time.
But I think a good way into this. You mentioned Kenra. That they will. Well, trains will be running on time.
That was earlier reforms,
Thank you.
as you both know. Wasn't the bloke in the silly hat?
We can have as many silly acts as we want in social, but there'll be more than we need.
Everyone will be free to wear whatever hat they like.
But first of all, just a bit more on the type of nationalisation we see in socialism. Looking at Ken Loach's Spirit of 45, it's a very good documentary on the 1940s left-leaning Labour government and its limitations as well, because effectively, I think like you were saying earlier, you have the big four train companies taken into public ownership, but it's still the same people running them, it's still the same sort of capitalist bosses running them, it's not run from the bottom up by the workers, service unions and the state itself, and it led to a lot of the same problems. So a lot of the flaws in National Rail were the type of nationalisation you saw as well, which was still very top down and still the same people fundamentally in place. Anything to add on that before we talk about how transport should be in general?
No, I completely agree. If we're going to have a new nationalised rail service, why would you settle for the lesser evil? You always want to have the best you can fundamentally have.
I want the best evil I can get.
You want the best evil you can fundamentally have. But genuinely, what you want is you want to have a say in your railway. You want to have a say in every part of your life. Because we're talking specifically about the railway, we're talking about industrial democracy. And so that's the railway workers should be represented in shaping the future of these operators. And in the same way, the passengers, these are the people on the trains paying for the privilege, if you like, of travelling by railway, and they should be the people shaping it. It shouldn't be based on the profits of far off people in Monaco, because at the end of the day, who gives a shit about these people? They don't care about us.
I don't even know where Monaco is.
Just after we entered the point at 2:30. Yeah. But what it should actually be done is run in the need of the people who use these services and the people who work on these services. And this is why, and this isn't even a particularly radical demand, this is basic stuff. You know, they've had parts of this in different parts of Europe, depending on different flavours of government, you know. What we want is actual workers' control in combination with the people who use it. And the only way you're ever going to get a say in any service you use is if it's under control of the workers and the service users. And that's what we are. You're either a rail worker or you're someone who uses the trains. Everyone in this country uses the railway to see family, to go on holiday, to go to work, whatever. We all use the railway, and that's part of our national fabric, it's part of our life. So we should have a right to have a word in that, and that's only fair at the end of the day.
Trains are sort of central to everything, aren't they?
Yeah, especially in this country where we invented the railway. It came from here, didn't it? You know.
So let's talk in general a bit about what socialist transportation would look like. So picture the scene. Parliament's been stormed. Richard Leese has been tied to a donkey and dragged out of town.
Finally.
Everyone's going on about Soviets. There's big statues of Jeremy Corbyn being erected all over the place. And everyone's just going absolutely wild. What would that mean for our transport infrastructure?
I'm on a slight tangent.
Oh no.
Just the the fact that you were talking about storming things. Sort of post the Russian Revolution, the trains were quite sort of fundamental to improving the literacy in the country, weren't they? They were able to improve the literacy rate sort of dramatically by using the trains as a tool to bring sort of education to the people. So I could see trains sort of working, maybe not in it's not exactly comparable, but the way that we use train travel at the moment, it's not really about the sort of quality of the experience, but you could use trains in a sort of in a similar way as a kind of educational tool, perhaps.
Definitely. And I think that's an important point in that Karl Marx talks about revolutions being the locomotives of history. But I would say the first thing that would ever happen under a left, Labour or whatever government, the first step of renationalisation would be the railways in this country, because it's such an integral part of the fabric of this country. It's part of capitalism, and that's where it originated in this country. So I would turn it on its head, and I would say that locomotives are the revolutions of history.
Oh wow, it's not laboured at all.
That's your contrived metaphor.
I'd also say, like, in terms of the Bolshevik Party experience, trains were very central to Trotsky's role as well. We had his own war train, which had a cabin for like radio equipment, medals, and all sorts of things. It was just a great train. He was squeaking around in his full leather outfit, and what times they were! What times they were!
Because I do kind of think about that when I'm on a train, about how it's kind of dead time in a way. It's like you could be using that for something productive.
I always read Trotsky on the boat.
Well, there you go. You can use it for all the Marxist reading that you need to catch up on. But
hundreds of years worth.
But I don't know. You can have something that you could engage people with. Like you could have, if you just wanted to sign up to a class or something on the train, you could have language classes, or I don't know. The possibilities are there for that time to be used in a more sort of productive way, and for people to engage with each other rather than just sitting, as individuals, but have a more sort of train community.
I think you'd have to have because I think some people will just want to be a bit icy or have a nap or something.
Yeah.
So I think an isolation carriage.
Yeah, that's
and then
acceptable.
the entertainment carriages.
Yeah.
One for like travelling minstrels, the other for who'd always be that'd be their fixed job in that cabaret. They'd always be travelling. But you'd have like classes. You'd learn French on the train. Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
Be fantastic. But I think in terms of something I'd like to bring this on to is like you've nationalised things like buses, trams, and all sorts of things. I think ideally having absolutely free transport, your OAP pass could be given to absolutely everyone. Should just be seen as a fundamental. That it's just useful for people to be able to travel, and people should have that right to travel. And I think in terms of ecology is the main thing as well with trains. Could bring back a lot of train lines. We forget, it sounds sort of utopian, but all sorts of places were connected to train stations back in. Before 1962, you had the Beecham cuts, but before that, tiny little villages. There's a village in Shropshire near me called Detton, and that place was wiped out by the Black Death in the 1300s. Yet even that had a train station by it, like everywhere.
In the 1300s.
Yeah, but like, they were ready for one if it happened, and they were saying, "I wish they'd nationalised this thing. Doesn't exist."
Yeah, that's something that we didn't really talk about before when we were talking about what's wrong with the current system, is the sort of rural isolation that we have in this country. Like Cornwall is one of the poorest places in Europe, and that's partly down to the fact that it doesn't have these kind of connections. So people that are in Cornwall,
Devon has its problems too.
Yeah,
But it links into the beaching.
Yeah,
So that's what you're leading to there,
Yeah.
isn't it? A good example of what you talk about, the financial benefits of having a railway station, is where I'm from, as I'm sure you may be able to tell, in Surrey. Nearest station, Surbiton's a huge station, and the reason it's got a large station is because Kingston, the big town next door, big market town, historical town, refused to have a train station because they were too good to have a train station, kind of thing, which means that Surbiton's overtaken it as a kind of economic hub for people transporting into London. And that really shows the financial benefits of having a railway link in all sorts of other places across the country. And the Beeching Cuts sadly got rid of those because they thought, it's like an onion, isn't it? You peel away the layers and eventually get to nothing. And they got rid of all of these branch lines that led to the main lines taken into places. Unfortunately, these branch lines, they were taking people to the main line. So when you got rid of those, you had a drop in passenger numbers.
Yeah.
And then you get rid of more, and then you're going to have a continuous drop in passenger numbers. The more you cut away from it, the smaller it gets. It's not profitable.
What old,
Yeah.
old Noam Chomsky or Chompers,
Chompers,
as he's known by Russell Brand.
Gnome chompers.
Yeah.
He talks about, I'm not sure if it's a manufacturing consent or not, but he talks about how a good tactic of getting rid of public services and privatising is cutting them, making them less effective, making them less popular. We can see that with the NHS, terribly cut. You've got big queues outside, looks disastrous.
Yeah.
And that's to sort of soften the public mood against privatising it, because doing it all at once would be incredibly unpopular. But just going back to
As we can see with the NHS at the moment as well.
having even these old transport links brought back would be a substantial boost to sort of public services. A lot of these rural areas, they get a bus coming through tiny villages about once every 2 weeks, and send you to Kidderminster. So what's
no
the
one
point?
wants to go to.
So
Yeah.
You
people
know,
can't
it's
get out. I feel like we should send a rescue mission.
I know this is
so.
this is we should be talking about more Manchester examples.
We'll
There we
send
go.
Matt Rapp in a fire ambulance to rescue them.
What have we got? This
It's
is
just not
the
fair.
Manchester podcast.
No one should be from Kidderminster. It's not right.
A man from Surrey, a man from
They've
Shropshire,
all got
and
6
a woman
toes
from
on each hand.
woman from
Do you even
Leicester.
know where I'm from?
Leicester, East Midlands,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I can get there on the train if I walk to Ludlow. Ludlow.
East-West rivalry.
No, but it is very important to look at what this would mean for socialism, and in terms of the ecosystem and ecology as well, because you could cut out massively car transportation and things like that by having decent public services. So the amount of fossil fuels burned, the amount of carbon pumped into the atmosphere by cars and this motorway infrastructure. A lot of this came, I don't know if this is true because I heard it off my school bus driver in Shropshire who...
One who died.
No, the other one.
Oh.
I quite a few. But basically this idea, there was a need to sell a lot of cars in the post-war boom era, and that's capitalism again.
Yeah.
And the car has always been linked to this idea of capitalism, about individualism, isn't it? I've got freedom to go and drive a car. Now, as a left intellectual, of course I can't drive. That's just to be expected, isn't it?
Half of the
Yeah.
course, I believe. What you were saying earlier, Bridget, about the communal nature of public transport, about people not talking to each other and avoiding each other's eyes. I think that's the key thing. I think the way that capitalism's got so fragmented now, it's always just about the individual, you're atomised as a person.
Yeah.
Decent communal public transport, I don't even need a public good. Something like that would be superb, having a library, you could have a conversation with people, just like a book trolley going up and down, you could start conversations, like you said, about learning different languages, conversing with other people.
Yeah.
That's something we've lost. Now at the moment, you go in there as a set of 800 different people, rather than as a community going to your places of work.
Yeah. And nationalisation brings with it that sort of public spirit as well. It's something that's it's not just about the actual economics of taking back the rail companies into public ownership, but it's also sort of the spirit that it's done in as well. It's like it becomes something that you feel a sense of ownership of and you feel more connected to.
Something that can't be monetised
Yeah.
at the end of the day. It's outside of that system, isn't it? That's a connection with the other human
And
beings.
even on the dull basic level, it would work better. You'd have decent infrastructure. You could travel where rural areas would be finally connected, which they used to be, but they'd be connected again.
Yeah.
And it would be free. It'd be free to go on these things. You'd have
Madness.
travelling minstrels on the carriages. There'd be
I'm
a quiet
sorry,
area.
I'm not having
What?
travelling minstrels.
No,
on the
but that's
carriages.
it.
They're getting off.
It's
That's
also-
the next
you
stop.
have-
They're getting off.
There'd be a vote on it, but you'd have a carriage to do what you like on the miserable carriage,
I think
and everyone would be happy. What's not to like about socialism?
a pug in every carriage. That's what I would.
Pug in every carriage.
Or a cat, depending on preference.
Yeah,
And
maybe we
allergies.
could
And allergies as well.
But
You get a cockapoo on them, they don't shed hair, so they're actually much better for people with dog allergies. Some people with mild allergies can
One of
actually.
them Sphinx cats they have now.
They've had them a while, them sphinxes.
How do they smell though?
Whether it smelled like in the late Bronze Age, I believe.
But I was reading recently something that Elon Musk said.
Our Lord and Saviour.
Yeah, yeah, that's his full title, isn't it?
The man who reinvented the tube.
Yeah, that is.
No, sorry, non-submarine. Let's call it what it is. We're getting off piece here.
But that is the kind of transport innovation that we get under capitalism, isn't it? It is Elon Musk. He is transport
Well, he's
entrepreneur.
reinventing the bus.
Yeah.
That's his policy is, and didn't he say, I used to like getting a bus until I realised I get on a bus and I'm sitting there thinking, these people, they might be serial killers.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to
The response
mention.
to that is, you're a serial killer, Elon Musk.
I think-
You're a fucking serial killer. We're all scared of you.
Let's
because
just
you
say,
literally kill people in your factories.
A lot of people look at Elon Musk with the look of a serial killer.
Yeah.
I think that's just
It's
because
like-
he winds
it's-
people up.
It's not paranoia if it's true. When Elon Musk gets on a bus, people want to kill him.
That is just a fact. Not that we're endorsing that, but it's just. I tell people actually to refrain from doing that, but I can see why you would.
It's very generous of you.
Thank you. It's been brought us legal.
But Elon Musk's idea for public
To
transport,
avoid being sued.
it's reinventing the wheel. That's his plan. Is I'm going to make buses but more expensive and only for posh people. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like I'll make a bus, but instead of paying £4 because you're being ripped off, you're going to have to pay £40 for a single. What he's saying is everyone should travel by Concorde. That's his plan.
Yeah.
And it's not fucking Futurama. I know you've seen a lot of Futurama, Elon, as he's known to his friends. You don't want to be transported by tubes.
And
No,
then-
we're not post.
I'm not puree. I
No.
don't want it.
And none of his projects have actually been proven to work. It's always like, 2 years in the future this is going to happen, another 2
Well,
years in the future
Well,
this
he's
is going to happen.
subsidised
So-
by the government and
Yeah.
speculative
Well,
capitalists.
I think that's-
in collusion.
When Elon Musk is mentioned, it's time to draw to a close. I think the strong lesson to that is
Yeah.
capitalist innovation. If Elon Musk is expected to do it, has certainly reached a dead end. If he succeeds, it'll be worse. It'll be weird. So I don't think we want that. So listen to Bob Crow.
And
Listen
you
to
can
Leon
fuck him out if he
Trotsky.
wants to.
Nationalise them railways. Have your little book trolley on the trains. All of this will require the revolution of the proletarian masses. So get on board if you've agreed with these
Is
ideas.
that a train fan?
I could have been. I wish I had been.
To paraphrase Mayakovsky, Bob Crow lived, Bob Crow lives, and Bob Crow will live.
Well,
Bob Crow's dead, long live Bob Crow.
there we go.
That's
But,
exactly right.
well, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope it's been informative. We'll be producing more, whether you like it or not. But it was hopefully entertaining. That was the pilot one. We'll try and improve. Any messages of how we can improve, any subjects you want to hear, send to just make a comment on the Facebook, on the YouTube service will be on.
The YouTubes.
The YouTubes. I forgot what my email address for the
Twitters.
Spotify is now.
And
But
the Facebooks.
I'll link any ways to
Yeah.
contact us in the description. But yes, please let us know what you thought. We'll be putting more up, and we'll hopefully be putting a couple of little short form videos explaining some basic socialist ideas. But if you'd like that, like the Manchester and Trafford Socialist Party Facebook page, like the Socialist Party Facebook page as well. Have a look on the website where you can read the paper, and you can donate there as well. That'd be nice. But have a lovely day.
Have a revolutionary day.
Have a revolutionary day.
Other revolutionary parties are available, such as the Alliance for Workers' Liberty, the Revolutionary Communist Group, the Communist Party of Great Britain Provisional Central Committee, and the Communist Party of Britain, brought to you by some Welsh guy.
You forgot socialist action. I can't believe it.
Forget that. For a reason.